to right, Russell Westbrook. You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Party on Broad. Today is our draft recap and grade show. We're going to look at the Eagles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds of the NFL draft. We're going to grade it, talk about our favorite picks, talk about our least favorite picks, and just really break down what this draft means for the Eagles moving forward. Joining me tonight is my man, Shane. You know him on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. What's up, Shane?
Much, man. I'm on like caffeine overload. Got like no sleep this weekend. I was talking to somebody on Twitter today and talking about how Devontae Smith had torn both his ACLs and messed up both his ankles. And they were like, and I was like, I meant Dickerson, whatever. I need coffee. So that's where I'm at right now. But I'm excited to break down the draft again.
Also joining us is my man, Dylan. He is the host of pretty much everything these days. I can't even count them anymore. Like not 1, not 2, not 3. He is Dylan Davis. Follow him on Twitter at DylanJD98. Dylan, what's up, man?
What is going on, guys? I think we got some background changes, but there we go. Yeah, I'm excited. You three, you guys did all the draft work. You guys, Mark, as well. I'm not going to front and act like I'm this big NFL draft guru and know a shit ton about every prospect and every pick, but I'm here to react to everything and either be extremely excited or down in the dumps. So it'll be fun.
Also joining us is the voice of the people. He is Rob Lange. Follow him on Twitter at Philly_Madness. What's going on, Rob?
Sorry, guys. I was late. I was looking up some 2022 defensive linemen. The only positions the Eagles are going to draft come next year. So I'm just preparing myself 362 days in advance. Love
it. And then we've got a special guest today. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Malley. Follow him on Twitter at Malley_Chris_24. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Finally got some sleep. 20 hours of live streaming this weekend, and just a lot of time dedicated to these prospects. And Rob, luckily enough, the Edge class is amazing next year, so you actually enjoy watching some of that film. I'm already answering questions about next year's draft because everyone's like, well, we didn't get corners. I'm like, luckily there's like 5-star corners next year. But overall, though, I'm excited to talk to class and dissect a lot of these picks and talk about some of the undrafted free agents that people are getting pretty excited about. Overall, it's going to be interesting to hear what everyone's takes on the draft.
Love it. Guys, we're going to start off with draft grades. If you're watching us, please be sure to like this video and subscribe. But make sure you guys comment. We want to hear your reaction, your grades of all these draft picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Before we get rolling, here's a word from our sponsor. Hey, what's up, guys? MLB baseball is in full swing. The NBA and NHL playoffs are right around the corner, and the NFL season is mere moments away. While we here at the Painted Lines are devoted to bringing you top-notch content from all the major sports, we are excited to also now give you the opportunity to cash in on all that content and knowledge. If you follow the link below, you will have the opportunity to sign up with BetRivers, an online sportsbook, and get an instant new user deposit match of up to $250. That's free money that you can use and try to turn into more free money. Let's go. Don't sit there and waste all that money. Turn every basket into an otherwise meaningless Cavs-Timberwolves matchup in on a random Wednesday in March. That makes it all the more exciting. For betting tips and advice, be sure to check out written content from our top prognosticator, Money Max, on our website at thepaintedlines.com, or check out the Tough Cover podcast right here on the Painted Lines YouTube channel. You've seen the commercials all over TV and radio, but now is the time. Sign up today with BetRivers using the link below and start cashing in on your love for sports. Using the link below will automatically inform BetRivers that TPL sent you, and you'll get that new user deposit match of up to $250. Don't miss out on this opportunity for some free money, baby. All right, guys, let's get rolling here. Let's start talking about quick evaluations and grades for the Philadelphia Eagles draft class. I'm going to throw it to Rob. What is your take here for this Eagles draft class? Quick grades, quick takes.
I've been back and forth a lot. I think I'm settling in the C+ range, and a lot of that is because, once again, a lot of guys in this draft class we're kind of forced to have faith that Howie knows what he's doing. And that hasn't really boded well for us in the past. Look, I love Devontae Smith. You saw my reaction. We were all here. It was unbelievable. And I'm a big fan of Kenneth Gainwell. We'll get into all that stuff. But, you drafted some guys with injury issues. You drafted some guys that could be really good players. If it was another GM, then I'd say, yeah, I'm all in. But Howie's track record is not good enough for me to just dive right in and give them a B+ or an A-. So I think I'm going to settle at the C+ range. Once again, there's a lot of room for that grade to go up in the next few years. But because of Howie's track record, it's really hard to go anything above that right now.
All right, let's go to Dylan. What about you, man?
Yeah, I gave it a B on Turf Talk, and I'll stick with that. I think it's a B- around that range. It has A potential, but the one thing that just continues to stick out outside of Devontae Smith, like how he crushed night one, and it's the first time in a while we've seen him do that, and I'm still picking my jaw up off the floor that he went up and got the guy he wanted and selected Devontae Smith. But outside of that, it's like, okay, now what's Howie going to do? And it's like there's a lot of ifs. Yeah, and if. I mean, dude, and I know we're going to get to Landon Dickerson, but that pick has A potential, but it also has like D- like floor because of the injury history. Like that's the scariest part with him. Milton Williams in the third round, I don't know. So there's a lot of ifs. I'll give it a B, and I think that's kind of being a little generous.
What about you, Chris?
So right now I have it in the B range with A+ potential if Landon Dickerson and some of these other guys pan out, especially Milton Williams. That's a guy that everyone is talking about the upside, and that's how a lot of these picks are. The reason why it's hard to give the grade like a B+ or even an A- is because we know that we didn't hit on specific needs, but we did get guys with high valuations that like Marlon Tuipulotu, like that was a guy that was looked at like back end third round, early fourth round. We got him in the 6th, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, like that's awesome, but like that's a loaded position. He's already going to be playing behind Milton, who we just drafted, and you don't even know how much time he's going to be getting, even if he does play at edge. And it was just frustrating because like we didn't really hit a corner. I think Zach is going to be really good inside, outside to be determined. But overall, though, it's a big question mark. Every draft's a big question mark, but more so because there's a lot of blue chip guys that we passed on for guys that might have been a little bit better overall, but not positions of need.
What about you, Shane?
Yeah, so I look at the Eagles draft, and I'm going to give it like a solid C. I think that the Eagles just had the riskiest draft in the NFL. Like we took swings at high ceiling, low floor players. If you just look at the first 3 picks, you've got Devontae Smith, who has concerns about size. You've got Landon Dickerson with major health questions. You've got Williams with size questions. I mean, he's an elite athlete, but he's so undersized. And so on the one hand, you can say the Eagles are not a player away from competing, and so you can afford to take those risks. But on the other hand, those risks have not worked out for the Eagles in a long time. And I look at the draft, and it's hard not to be frustrated by the overinvestment on the defensive line. I mean, we picked 4 defensive line players because I'm counting our last pick as he's an edge. He's not a linebacker. Howie defended it afterwards, saying he knows people are tired of lineman draft picks, but building through the trenches is how the Eagles won a Super Bowl. And that's true to a degree. But if you look at the Super Bowl team, we had Michael Kendricks, Jordan Hicks, Nigel Bradham at linebacker. We had Patrick Robinson, Ronald Darby, Jalen Mills, Malcolm Jenkins, Rodney McLeod as defensive backs. Like we didn't have a secondary and linebacking core full of bums that we were trying to cover up with a good pass rush. And I went and dug it up today. If you go back and look at like the sacks per season, in 2017, the Eagles had 38 sacks. They haven't been under 40 sacks any season since. Like the defensive line is not the problem with this team, but I feel like it's the only thing that Howie and the front office look at, and that's really frustrating to me.
Yeah, I love how divisive this draft class is, as it always is. I'm a little definitely higher. I'm in that B to B+ range. I think this draft depends on your expectations for the Eagles' success in 2021. I know they didn't address some of their biggest needs, linebacker, defensive back, but for me personally, I already came into this draft knowing that it's not about 2021. I already knew that we were going to see kind of this plan implemented here, but I absolutely love the first 2 picks. I thought they did a very good job of putting, two guys around Jalen Hurts. And truly, at the end of the day, it's about giving Jalen Hurts that true audition he deserves here as we try and figure out who is the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward. The only problem that I have with this draft is kind of that, like, what if, like, what could have been. You touched on it, Chris. But, like, my guys, Trevon Merrick, Jabril Cox were right there. They were right there for for the taking. Really, truly fell into Howie Roseman's lap, and we could have had a bang, bang, bang first 3 rounds that had Merrick, Cox, and Devontae Smith. And now, like, could you imagine waking up on like Saturday morning and being like, "This is great, this is great," and here we go. I think the biggest question remains on defense, like you guys said, where a ton of pressure is going to be put on Jonathan Gannon. And I'm really interested in to see how he's going to truly develop these guys. And like you all guys said here, they don't exactly have the best track record for it. Let's move on to the next question. Who is your favorite pick from this year's draft class? Let's start it off in reverse. Shane, go ahead.
All right. Well, obviously the most impactful is Devontae, and I think it's a great pick, but I figured everybody's going to say him. So I'm going to talk about somebody else and hope everybody else doesn't zig when I did too. So I'm going to talk about Kenny Gainwell. I guess he said he wants to go by Kenny instead of Kenneth now, but I had a lot higher grade on him than a 5th round. I had a 3rd round grade on him. And I said all along that running back was an underrated need. And so for him to fall there in the 5th round, I thought was tremendous value. We know that Nick Sirianni loves using his running backs in the passing game, and Miles Sanders just isn't good at that. Like, he came in from college with questions about his ability to pass protect and catch out of the backfield. And his rookie year, he did fine there. Last year, it was a disaster. He was number 2 in the NFL in drops from the running back position. So, I've said this on Twitter, and people wanted to say, well, the quarterback play was bad. Well, I'm not talking about the quarterback play. I'm talking about balls that hit you in the hands and you couldn't bring them in. And so Gainwell is good at that. He gets involved out of the backfield. He even gets involved from the slot. So I put on some tape of him, and I saw him running vertical routes at the boundary on tape, making back shoulder catches. So he is a legitimate weapon that I think they're going to move around and use in the slot. I think they're going to use him in different ways. He had 51 catches in his 1 year as a starter. And when you get the ball in his hands, he's elusive. And then he's good in pass pro too. I mean, you all saw the clip that went viral on Twitter where he decleated Micah Parsons. And if you didn't love the guy before, seeing Parsons go to the Cowboys and seeing the guy that can knock him down get drafted to the Eagles, that's a win. So I was a huge fan of that pick.
What about you, Chris?
So I was going to say Kenny Gainwell as well, because we talked about him on the draft show. That was a guy that we really loved, and that was a guy that we said, and a position that we said was an underrated need. I mean, Josh Adams was our leading rusher just a couple of years ago, and then it's been the Boston Scott show against the Giants the last 2 years, and it's how he talks about the defensive line in the trenches. Look at the running back core in that Super Bowl year. But I'm going to pivot and go to my LSU guy, Jacoby Stevens. He's one of my favorite value picks, because if you look at stats, draft eligible safety since 2019, he's first in safety pressures, first in hurries, first in sacks, and he's second for tackles for loss. And he's kind of like a poor man's JOK, meaning you get him a little bit later, but look at the competition he went up against. He has really good ball skills, actually. If you watch any of the interception clips, he can get a little bit lost in the zone, but the reason why I like him is just like Malcolm Jenkins, and he's a lot beefier, is that you can put him at the line, and you can even put him on the edge, and he'll take on offensive tackles, he'll take on tight ends, he'll take on running backs, and he can cover pretty well. The reason why I like him is we didn't have a thumper like him in this defense yet, because you can talk about Kayvon Wallace, you can talk about McLeod, you can talk about Anthony Harris. None of them have the hitting or just the presence that Stevens is going to have. And if you listen to what Ed Orgeron says, you're never going to be worried about his toughness. And he's a very good leader off the field. And I think that there's a lot of potential there. And I expect him to make the 53 and see the field a lot, even starting week 1.
Chris, did you see him completely destroy Devontae Smith?
Yep. Hopefully he doesn't do that in practice.
I love that pick. That was actually one of my highest graded picks there. Dylan, who's your favorite pick from this draft here?
Yeah, I agree with everything they said, and I agree with Shane that everyone's going to say it, but I'm not going to kid myself, and I'm just going to come out and say it. It's Devontae Smith. It's the guy that I had number 1 on my big board realistically at 12, and I had little to no faith that Howie was going to select him. I had almost Dibes, your worst case scenario almost played out where both corners and all the wide receivers are gone. If Denver doesn't take Surtain, Dallas gets Surtain, we don't get the trade, Devontae Smith stays in the division with the New York Giants. I'm not going to kid myself. It's my favorite pick. It's the guy that I wanted most. And like I said, I'm still picking my jaw up off the floor that Howie Roseman made the correct selection, in my opinion. So that's where I'll go. And also, he's just going to be the most impactful, in my opinion.
Rob.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Chris here. I was thrilled with the Jacoby Stevens pick. Now, there's a couple reasons. One, I have said numerous times when on air with you guys that I am sick and tired of drafting this guy from this school. He's an SEC player, which means he played the top college competition at all times. The other thing that I really like about this pick is when he was drafted, the Eagles did not list him as a safety. They told you right off the bat what their plans are for Jacoby Stevens, and that's to make him a linebacker, which, as Chris was talking about, he's a little bit bigger, but he still has those coverage skills where he could get a back, out of the backfield or a tight end and something like that. And I love the guy that just comes up and lays the wood. And it's been a long time since the Eagles have had that guy that just lays the wood at all times. So I'm really excited about that pick, probably overly excited about that pick, but just to see an SEC guy, a guy that has championship pedigree, come in here and he's going to play that, like everyone said they didn't draft a linebacker. I think you're going to watch this guy transition into that in the NFL.
My pick was Kenny Gainwell, but just going to go against what everyone else did. I'm going to combine 3 guys here. It is Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, and Jacoby Stevens. We're finally plugging guys from the SEC. The Eagles haven't gotten a guy since 2002, I believe. Freddie Milon's, I think, round 5? We got back-to-back Bama guys. We've got the LSU blood coming in. I'm just happy that we're finally doing what's right here and doing what's necessary and injecting that speed and all that kind of stuff that we've really lacked in recent memory. So Kenny Gainwell was my pick, but like I said, I'm truly happy that we're finally plucking guys from Bama. Let's go. Let's start off with least favorite pick. Rob, you're up, man.
I mean, there's a couple different ways I could go, but I know it's a 7th round, and who cares about the 7th round, but I'm struggling to see the fit for Patrick Johnson at Tulane. I feel like this guy was more of a 3-4 player. And once again, as Shane has mentioned, he mentioned it the day of the draft. You have already drafted 3 defensive linemen at this point. He's not going to play linebacker for you here. He's probably going to have to be an edge. So now you've just spent another pick on a 4th lineman, in a sense, defensive lineman. And once again, there were a couple guys still on the board, and I know it's the 7th round, so it's a flyer, but at bigger positions of need where I would have liked to have seen that pick go that way. And people are going to tell me you're nuts, but even a bigger wide receiver at that point, right? Try and get a guy with some size. Maybe I think Sage Surratt might have still been out there. There are a couple different guys, but it just seemed like that was just we're the Eagles. We draft defensive linemen, so let's draft another one. Rather than at that point, look at what your needs are and try and get another body, whether it be a corner, a safety, or a wide receiver.
Dylan, you're squinting. Any take on that, man?
Oh, no, I agree. I'm just going to go a little bit different route, but I'm going to stay at the same position as Rob, and I'm going to go with the first guy they took off the board at that position in the 3rd round in Milton Williams. And it's not anti-Milton Williams so much. It's just the fact that, look, just listening to you guys and having the disagreements on bigger need, wide receiver 1 and cornerback 2, but acknowledging how big of a need cornerback 2 is, and then you see Howie go wide receiver in the 1st round, and then the fact that you don't address corner until the 4th round is something I don't understand. And then you can make the case, well, why don't you say Landon Dickerson? Well, Landon Dickerson, Brian Baldinger said if he can stay healthy, he's the best offensive line prospect that he's seen since Quentin Nelson on tape. Well, that has high praise, and he was a first-round grade. So if he can stay healthy, and I know we'll get into that pick, then I'm fine with that. Milton Williams comes in, and then you see the war room footage, and it's just like the pick screams analytics to me. I'm sorry, it does. It screams upside, it screams analytics, and not the need, not even best. Talking about the board, I don't even think it was. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong here. Was it even one of the best players available at that point? Like, what is that Milton Williams pick in the third round? So that's where I'll go.
Dane Brugler had him pretty high. It was like in the 60s, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe he had a third round grade on Milton Williams. What about you, Chris?
So I'm not going to say the same person as Rob. Just wanted to highlight something. Patrick Johnson, the reason I knew him is because every single time I was on the Draft Network and doing a mock draft, he was always there in the 6th and 7th round, and all I saw was his face and the Tulane logo every single time. And sadly enough, it wasn't because of his play. It was just because of that. I watched him a lot. I think he's kind of like a tweener, and I don't think he's going to make the 53, and I don't even know if he's going to make the practice squad, to be honest. Hopefully he shows us something, but we'll see. The guy I want to focus on, and the reason why the the 7th round pick kind of frustrated me is because there's still a lot of guys there. I know it's the 7th round, but this is a draft class where guys slid a lot because people either didn't do their homework or because there's a little bit of like mystery or smoke around guys and they fell. I mean, I think that I felt 100% better about the Patrick Johnson pick when we got a guy like Trevin Grimes in the undrafted free agency pool, because I was hoping that we used our last pick on maybe DJ Daniel from Georgia or Austin Watkins from UAB. But overall, though, I feel like Zach McPherson's the guy that I'm looking at in the 4th round. I think that he's going to be a really good inside cornerback. I'm not sure how he's going to transition to the outside. He's a ball hawk. He's an interesting guy. In the 4th round, it was kind of interesting to me, but I felt like it was more out of need. Like, I feel like they wanted Aaron Robinson, and they lost him when they moved back from Milton Williams, and then they're like, crap, we had to take a cornerback here. I can see why they like him, especially with a Gannon scheme, but I felt like they've reached a little bit because I know that there's people that had him up like around this range, but overall, though, I felt like he could have been had a little bit later. I feel like I don't hate the pick. I think I see the upside, but I still think we obviously need a CB1B with all the guys that we got coming in here. I mean, we've highlighted the competition at wide receiver coming in here, and I just don't want the kid to get shell-shocked year one, week one, with the competition coming in.
I kept sending Shane tweets of Sam Hinkie smiling all weekend because, like, he's just preparing this Eagles defense with no linebackers, no outside corners.
They've got to sign somebody, right? They got to wait till post June 1 and sign one. There's a couple guys out there that you can make the case that they'll bring in just as on a 1-year deal, whether it's the Nelson kid from Pittsburgh or whatever. Like, Dibes, I know what you mean that this season's being punted, but look, you can't. It's not the NBA. So the tank doesn't work the same way. You put, like Chris has said, you put a kid like McPherson out there and he gets shell-shocked, you might lose him forever. You can't do that to these kids. If you really want to use them as building chips later on, you've got to have the veterans in there and let the veterans take their lumps.
Yep. What about you, Shane? Least favorite pick?
So my least favorite pick's Landon Dickerson. We want to talk about, hey, he's a first-round talent if he's healthy. Well, guess what? He's not, and he hasn't been ever in his career. And if we want to talk about taking a first-round pick talent-wise, let's talk about Dylan Moses, who went undrafted. Maybe we use a 7th-round pick on a linebacker that was considered a first-round pick before he tore his ACL. Like, if we really want to do it, why don't we do that? But let's remove the injury for a minute. Let's say Landon Dickerson is totally healthy, he's never been injured, and he is an elite talent that pans out in the NFL. Okay. Over the Cat posted a study of the top 15 paid players at every position in the NFL and where they were drafted. You know what the lowest drafted position is on that list? It's center, with a median pick of 126th overall. Center is not a premium position. It is a position you can find people later in the draft. And if there's any team that should know that, it's the Philadelphia Eagles, who took Jason Kelce on day 3, and he's been a starter for a decade. Okay. Now you add in the fact that in 5 years of college, he has sustained 4 season-ending injuries. His teams have played 64 games in those 5 years, and he's missed 26 of them. He's torn an ACL in each knee. He's had a surgery on one ankle, and he's injured the other ankle. Okay, he's not healthy. Now let's factor in need on top of all of that. The Eagles' interior offensive line is entrenched with starters in Isaac Seumalo, Jason Kelce, and Brandon Brooks. Yes, Brandon Brooks is coming off an injury. Yes, Jason Kelce is nearing the end of his career. Jack Driscoll showed the ability to play offensive guard last year, as did Nate Herbig. So even if Landon Dickerson is good, even if he's healthy, he sits on the bench this entire season, and it wasn't a need. And people have been yelling at me on Twitter for saying you don't draft for needs, and they're right to a degree. The draft is about building a base of talent. Drafting for needs is how you reach for players, okay? But there were players on the board that were not reaches. Trevon Moehrig was there. Asante Samuel was there. Jeremiah Usa-Koromoa there. These were guys who fit needs and have a better projection to the NFL. When you're drafting players, you should consider development potential, which involves getting on the field sometime in your first season, okay? We use pick 37, which is essentially a first-round pick on a player who's injury-prone and has no path to the field as a rookie. Okay, the Eagles have a weak roster. They just finished last place in the worst division in the history of the NFL. There's glaring needs all over the place. There were players there that were rated appropriately that weren't reaches to fill some of those needs. The Kansas City Chiefs just went to back-to-back Super Bowls and did not have a first-round pick. And they drafted 2 guys that I guarantee you are day one starters this season. The Eagles selected in the first of this draft, and they only ended up with 1 guy who I'm convinced will be a starter. And that's very damning of your drafting strategy.
Yeah, we have St. Nick Foles saying, Dickerson being Sidney Jones is scary. Why gamble there? Could have had Asante Samuel Jr., could have had Koromoa, Christian Barmore, Trevor Moehrig. All those guys, that's kind of we are kind of all on the same page on this pick here, because I like Landon Dickerson a lot, I do, but he was definitely in that tier below, at least for me, all those guys St. Nick Foles just mentioned. So I like Landon Dickerson. I think he's a very good player, but I'm kind of it's somewhat bittersweet, because in my head I wanted Howie to trade up. I understand that he wanted to throw as many darts to the dartboard and hopefully one of these guys stick. But so much talent here in that day 2 area. I kind of just wish we traded up more rather than sit back and just kind of let the board fall. And that's my only that's a true complaint that I have. Let's move on to Devontae Smith. Let's talk about reasonable season expectations for Devontae and how good you guys think he can be in this offense. Let's start off with Shane.
Okay, so I got that off my chest. I can be good again now. So, I see people throw around 1,000-yard seasons and stuff like that, and I really don't think that's what we're looking at here. And this isn't me being down on Devontae Smith. I think it's just reality of who's running our team right now and what kind of offense they're going to play. And so if you look back at the Colts in the last 3 years, they've had 1 1,000-yard receiver in 3 seasons. They love to spread the ball around to tight ends, to running backs. In 2020, their receptions leader was a running back, and their number 5 reception guy was also a running back. And so you look at how this is going to work out. I think you're going to see Gainwell getting the ball a lot. I think you're going to see Reagor getting manufactured touches. You're going to see Sanders getting the ball. I think we're going to run the ball a lot. We're going to use Hurts's legs to run the ball a lot. So I would be surprised if we see 1,000-yard season from him. If you go back to when he was at Alabama, and Mark Schofield talked about this when we chatted with him, but when Jalen Waddle was healthy, they manufactured touches for Waddle, and they put Devontae outside and let him run a normal route tree. They trusted him to get open. When Waddle went down, they started scheming those touches for Devontae. Okay, he can do both, but he is a better guy to stick outside and let him do his thing than Reagor, who just simply is not a good route runner at this point in his career. And so I think you're going to see Devontae. I think you're going to see him at the X. I think you're going to see him at the Z. I think you're going to see Reagor getting those manufactured touches. And I don't think you're going to see a crazy season for Devonta Smith. But it doesn't have to be a crazy season for the pick to be successful, for it to be the best season a receiver has had for the Eagles in quite some time. So I think the 800-yard range is attainable for him, but I don't think we're going to see, some 1,000-yard, 15-touchdown season out of him.
So Deshaun Jackson, his rookie year, had over 1,000 yards total through the air, on the ground. Let's add that to this question. Do you guys think over under 1,000 yards total for Devontae Smith? Go ahead, Chris. What do you expect from Devontae Smith this year, and could that be possible?
So everything that Shane said, I absolutely agree with. The Colts are a team that they share the wealth, especially because look at how the roster is constructed. We have a Dallas Goedert, we have a Miles Sanders, we have a Kenny Gainwell, and then you're going to see how the rest of the wide receiver room fills out, especially with Reagor getting manufactured touches. The only reason why I think Devonta Smith can touch 1,000 yards is the extra week. I feel like having 17 games, it's kind of a cheat code, and it's going to be weird because like guys who came before this season are like, well, I didn't have that extra game, so like how are like stats going to compare? But overall, I think that Devonta Smith is going to be a guy that out of pure need, he's going to be like an 80 catch, 950 receiving yard, 6-7 touchdown rookie year, and that's really good. I know that all the Viking fans go like, like not Justin Jefferson. It's like, okay, like what did you guys do with all those gaudy numbers? You're still not winning anything. And the thing with Devonta Smith, the reason why we love him is that he is an insanely high IQ guy. He makes the quarterback right. Even if the arm issues with Jalen Hurts come up and he maybe is like trying to throw to the boundaries and the ball is sailing a little bit, Devonta Smith at worst will knock it down. He is super aggressive. We call him the Slim Reaper for a reason. His body goes all over the place, insane balance, and he's just a guy that every quarterback would love to have on his team. You can trust him on 3rd and long, 4th and long, anything. He just gets the job done and he makes the quarterback right.
What about you, Dylan?
All right, Dobbs, you know me. I haven't been the most high on this Eagles team around here lately. But, I'm going to stay true to my happiness to Devontae Smith and the selection of Devontae Smith. So I want to say, yeah. I'm going to say not much over. I'm not saying 1,100. I'm not saying anything crazy. But I think he, especially with that extra week, like Chris said, I think that could be a little bit of a difference maker. I think, if I'm being honest, realistically, I could see like 900 yards. But I'm going to go out and just be optimistic about this kid, and I'll say that I think he can, especially because I don't think the Eagles are going to be in a decent amount of games, even though I know the schedule is not that hard this year. So it could be an air raid late in the game and just extra yards that way, manufactured that way. So I'll say, yeah, just being optimistic.
Over for Dylan. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get to 1,000. But look, as the week went on leading up to the draft, I became more and more like putting Devontae Smith as the top guy who I thought realistically the Eagles had a chance at. And part of that is I like intangibles, and I love a guy that was as successful as he is, but then as a chip on his shoulder because all you heard for the last 3 weeks leading up to the draft was why this guy was such a risk and, oh, look at that size. No one's ever been that size and was successful in the NFL. And everything he says, and, you could say it's just lip service, but I don't think it is with a guy like this. I think he is a dog. I think he is that scrappy dude. I think he's going to do everything he can. And just because I don't think he's going over 1,000 this year really isn't me taking a shot at him. It's more so the team. I don't expect the team to be very good this year. And I expect them to be trying new things week in and week out. So there may be one week where he goes for 150, 160, and there might be a week where he only gets 3 or 4 3 catches. And I think that's just going to happen. Like, I think 800 is a good number for him this year. He can get around there. I think that would be a good spot for him. But I tell you what, I'm saying it, Dives. I'm saying it right now. I'm even more excited for your boy, Reagor, now that Devontae Smith is here. Because maybe you can finally turn me around on this kid and make me feel like I'm okay with him. Because right now, he annoys the living hell out of me. I need him to play better in the field so I stop being annoyed by him.
So I was literally going to say that, and you stole the words right out of my mouth, Rob. Chris, just so you're aware, like I'm on Jalen Reagor Hill versus these 3 losers. I'm pretty much the only one that still believes in Jalen Reagor.
He was on Greg Ward Hill before he went to Jalen Reagor Hill.
I will not stand for any Greg Ward slander on my show, man. That does not happen here on Party on Broad. Love my Greg Ward. Love Greg Ward. All right. But yeah, you said it, Rob. Like, I'm excited that the Devontae Smith selection, why I'm so excited about it signals more motion on offense. Just jet sweeps, bubble screens, getting guys the ball, bang, bang, bang. We haven't seen that at all. And more, it's been pretty much just predictable. Defenses have sniffed it out over and over and over again. So I'm excited that we're going to get, this level of offense, creative offense. Jalen Reagor, Devontae Smith, they're going to stretch the field. They're going to put pressure on a defense, and we haven't seen that in a long time. So as much as I am excited about Devontae Smith, I think that selection also signals it's going to unlock Jalen Reagor and Nick Sirianni's offense. Before we get to the previous question by Rufus, St. Nick Foles says, are Fulgham and JJ going to battle for number 2 with Reagor in the slot? Any thoughts on that, guys?
If JJ Arcega-Whiteside is our number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah, no. If JJ Arcega-Whiteside makes this team out of camp, I'll be astonished. Because I've watched a lot of highlights of this kid Grimes since they signed him. I don't know how this kid wasn't drafted. I mean, he's a good football player. He's a big body. He goes up and gets the ball. Like, JJ, take your umbrella that you have to have on your head during training camp and go off. It's time for the Eagles to chalk that one up as another second-round L. Interesting.
I'm telling you right now, I went back and I always like to go back and look at my thoughts from a draft when they happened. And I was looking back to 2019 and how over the moon I was when we selected J-Jaw. And so I may just be an idiot that doesn't know anything about football, and you should discount everything I said. But, man, that was painful to reread.
All right. So this comment.
First of all,
Rufus,
real quick, Dives, he just dismissed your boy Greg Ward.
What's that? I know. Well, that's let's be honest here. Like, come on. Like, Greg Ward is right where he should be in that 4th, 5th range.
No. J-Jaw should not. No.
Wait.
J-Jaw should not be ahead of Greg Ward.
Well, I don't think Jalen Reagor is going to be strictly in the slot. I think he's going to be moved all around the field. So I do think there's opportunities there for Greg Ward.
It's a good question, though, when you look at the Eagles. So, obviously Reagor, Smith, I guess you figure Fulgham will be back, right? So then that leaves 3 spots. So I guess Ward is one of them.
You got Quez. Yeah, you got Quez.
You got Quez. Yeah, you got Quez. You got John Hightower. You got, And
I wouldn't be surprised if Ward doesn't make this team.
Yeah, I was going to say, I forgot about Quez and Hightower. Those guys are going to get a chance before Ward does. And I really think that Trayvon Grimes makes this team.
Yeah. All right. So this comment here, Rufus says he's going to bet his paycheck that Dickerson is a starting guard on this team this year and will be the center for years to come. That's a perfect segue. Let's talk about Landon Dickerson here. The Eagles drafted him here in the 2nd round. How much do you expect to see Landon Dickerson on the field in 2021? And how concerned should Eagles fans be about his injury history? Lead us off, Rob.
Rufus, I hope you have a lot of money saved if you're willing to make it. I'm probably going to lose that paycheck. Look, Shane, first of all, it was the first time I've seen true anger come out of Shane since I've been doing podcasts with him, and I loved every single minute of it. And he was spot on with everything that he said in that moment. You can't, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, not draft guys because you're worried about injuries and things like that, whether it be JOK or Dylan Moses and all that stuff, and then take Landon Dickerson at 37. You can't say we've learned from what we've done in the past, which was, 4 or 5 years ago with Sidney Jones, and then take Landon Dickerson there when it isn't even – we said coming into this draft, you need to come out with 3 day one starters.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. And not only didn't they do that, and I understand that they're punting on this season, but the best type of development is game action. And chances are Landon Dickerson will see very little, if any at all, game action this year. And, yeah, his injuries scare me to death. Sidney Jones, it was only 1 injury. You're talking 4 season-ending injuries for Landon Dickerson. Sure, he's a beast. But so was Greg Oden in college. You know what I mean? When you have injury issues, you cannot – that's not a guarantee. And the second-round pick, unless you are the Super Bowl champions and your whole roster's filled and you're only drafting for depth, the second-round pick should not be a luxury. It needs to be someone who can play. And I really am hoping that the Eagles come out smarter on this than we all are.
Dylan.
Yeah, man. Sorry, I was just tweeting something out. But if we're talking about Landon Dickerson, I agree. I don't think he's starting at guard at all this year. And, when I gave my worst pick of the draft and I gave Milton Williams, that's only because of the upside in Landon Dickerson. But as Shane was going on his spiel, I wanted to change my answer so bad because I agree with him. And it's not even – it's the injuries, it's the need, and it's also for the fact that you talked about, Dives, who was on the board at other positions of need when he was there. And when you look at ACL, ankle, ACL, and he's playing in the trenches, having to plant on those lower body injuries over and over again, fending off 340-pound defensive linemen trying to get after Jalen Hurts. I'm sorry. If they didn't hold up at Alabama, I don't know how those ligaments and those bones are holding up in the NFL. And I just don't – we have no reason to believe that after 4 straight years of season-ending injuries, the Eagles made the correct selection and this kid's going to be injury-free the rest of his career. That's where I stand on that.
Chris.
The thing that drove me the most, crazy during the draft were people that were, immediate Howie apologists after the Devontae Smith pick. Because I said before the draft, I not only need him to hit on the first round because that's a give me. I said you need to hit throughout the draft. And then next year with the compensation that you punted there to save your job and give you a little bit more time, you need to hit on some of that too. Because the thing is, you can't fool the informed Eagles fans. We're not a dumb fan base. We're not Vikings fans. We're not Giants fans who kick and punch walls. We do that, but we're actually smart. The thing is that drives me crazy is he's oh, we're smart, blah, blah, blah. It's you don't even have a philosophy because you got burnt by Sidney Jones. And then your explanation of passing on DK Metcalf was that you didn't want to get burned by injuries again. But then you go for the ultimate thing and you go for the most injured guy in the draft. And listen, we understand the upside, but it just doesn't make sense with the draft philosophies when you grab the Sidney Jones, you got burnt by it. You avoid DK Metcalf, you get burnt by it. And now you take Landon Dickerson. Hopefully we don't get burnt by it. The thing with me is I agree with everything Shane said. It's who do you move? People are let's just trade Brandon Brooks. It's you want to trade one of your best players on your team, for a guy that you could trade Brandon Brooks and then Landon Dickerson gets hurt on the first play. Then what happens? Hurts is going to be running for his life even more so. And it's just confusing because we talk about how much playing time he's going to have. The only reason why I have any faith, because the medical staff is an absolute mess still. Don't forget that. I have any faith is because Jeff Stoutland stayed. Jeff Stoutland has his ear to Alabama still. And first off, he's going to get his hands on this kid, and he's known him for a while. So he's going to know all the backstory and all the gossip more than anyone else. He can't be BS. Jeff Stoutland definitely talked to Nick Saban and said, listen, I got to know about the medicals. I got to know how this kid is on and off the field. So I feel like he definitely painted the picture to the Eagles better than any other scout or agent or anyone did. So let's see what happens. I mean, I'm hoping the kid stays healthy because I see the upside. It's just very frustrating that we still have a lot of holes on this team, and this kid might not even touch the field very much the first year.
Can I just say real quick, I'm happy to hear all you guys saying this because when the pick came out, I didn't know too much outside the injury history, and I was texting a bunch of people, and Mark Henry loved it, and a bunch of people loved it, and I had a couple of Alabama friends, and great pick. And I didn't want to come on here and tear this pick apart because of the injury history and the other positions in need. To hear you guys say this is just, thank God I'm not the only one.
So for me, I mean, starting at guard, if we want to get him on the field, well, you can't trade Brandon Brooks. His contract's pretty immovable, and Brooks is definitely your starter there. I've seen on Twitter people he's going to start at center this year. Jason Kelsey is still one of the best centers in the NFL. He's starting. And so the only spot you're looking at is left guard with Isaac Seumalo. And the Eagles like Seumalo. They've extended him. He's a solid guy. He's a guy that Eagles fans don't adequately appreciate. He's a good, solid, quality starting offensive guard. And yes, Dickerson's played all 5 positions at some point, but he is a center. And so are you going to try to make him learn a new position and take a multi-year starter off the field? Like, I don't think you're going to do that. And so it's possible he plays because injuries strike, but I don't see him as a week 1 starter. I only see him as a starter if injury happens. And as for being like concerned about the injury history, I've given my spiel, but like the Eagles can't keep players who are generally healthy on the field. Malik Jackson came here and he fractured his foot in his first game. Okay. Javon Hargrave had literally never missed an NFL game due to injury, and he got hurt in the first practice that he was in an Eagles uniform. And so a normal team should be worried about Dickerson's injury history. The Eagles should be double or triply worried. And so I just want to close this little conversation with Dickerson with a quote from someone, and I'll let you guys see if you can guess who it is. But this is a NFL executive once said this. He said, "Hope is not a strategy when it comes to injuries."
I've heard that before.
That was Howie Roseman.
Yeah.
Howie Roseman said, "Hope is not a strategy when it comes to injuries." And so you cannot keep blaming injuries for bad seasons when you double and triple down by selecting injury-prone players, extending injury-prone players, and bringing in injury-prone vets. It's no longer an excuse. You made the bed. You can lay in it if it happens.
Love it. Love it. Bang. Bang. All right. You guys crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. I'm going to piggyback off of what Chris said just a moment ago. If there's any reason to feel positive about this pick, it is definitely 100% Jeff Stoutland. And you look at the Eagles' track record with missing on top talent, top high-end talent. The fact that we're actually giving him and molding him under Jeff Stoutland, I think that kind of made me feel better when I woke up on Saturday morning. I was like, okay, all right, I do think Jeff Stoutland will get him right. St. Nick Foles says, great analysis, guys. If Dickerson doesn't start 10 games this year, at least fire Howie. Well, hopefully Howie's on another team or not.
I will say
it's not going to happen. The whole point of getting these picks was to save his ass for another year. That's what people were missing. That was what Howie was doing. We could sit here and say, oh, well, it's just a bit. No. Howie said, I'm saving my ass. Jeff, don't get rid of me yet. Let me use all these picks I accumulated for us.
And I will say this. I have been on the get a long-term replacement for Jason Kelce train for a while. I mocked Creed Humphrey to the Eagles with a 3rd-round pick. Okay, Creed Humphrey is a guy, and this isn't just about my love for Creed Humphrey, but Creed Humphrey lasted till the end of the 2nd round. And you know what his upside is? His upside is this much less, just a tiny step lower than Landon Dickerson's. And you know what Creed Humphrey did? He started 37 consecutive games at Oklahoma and never missed a game for injury. So if you wanted that, trade back and take Humphrey. And really, I would be more okay with the Landon. I said on our live stream, I would have been okay with the Dickerson pick if we addressed a position of need in the 3rd. I would have been okay with the Williams pick if we addressed a position of need in the 2nd. Like both of those picks in a vacuum, I thought were good value. But taken together, it just left a terrible taste in my mouth.
Yep. All right, let's go on to Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon. You guys were kind of just – there's some Andy Reid in this draft. There was a lot of Howie Roseman in this draft. But what did this draft teach us about Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon? Start us off, Shane.
So it's hard to tell for 2 reasons. One is we don't even really know how much they were allowed to be involved in the draft process. And 2 is because neither of them have called offensive and defensive plays before in Indianapolis. So we honestly just don't really know. But if I'm just going to extrapolate what we think we know, what we learned about Gannon is he never prioritized cornerbacks in Indy. He never drafted them in the 1st round. He never prioritized them in free agency. And that continued here. So it speaks to his belief that he can get the most out of lesser talent in the secondary, which cover 2 scheme, it requires less from your defensive backs. And so that's something, if Gannon is the driving force behind that, saying, hey, go get me these defensive linemen. It's going to fit my scheme. Then I'm more okay with this. For Sirianni, the most telling thing to me is the Gainwell pick. We believe this is a guy who really wants to throw the ball to running backs, and we drafted the best pass-catching running back in the draft. So that's what it really tells me about Sirianni, is that we're going to see running backs involved in a lot of ways, and much more diverse and a much heavier load than we ever saw under Doug Peterson.
What about you, Chris?
For the sake of the discussion, and after seeing some of the war room reactions, let's say that both guys did have a lot of input or some input into the war room, even though Tom Donahue didn't have any input apparently. But in general, though, I mean, I feel like you can tell that they're trusting their past situations and their schemes, especially with the Zach McPherson pick. That screamed Gannon to me because, well, it didn't in the way that they didn't take a rangy guy. I will say that. And they didn't take an outside corner, but meaning that they wanted a guy that just like fits the mold of like a ball hawk, a guy that can move all over. And in general, I felt like the Devonta Smith pick was like they got their guy. And I remember reading reports before when Sirianni was saying like an X doesn't have to be this like big body guy. Like we had like our T.Y. Hilton, like other years we had Keenan Allen. Like I just want a guy that I can trust to throw the ball to like 10 plus times, like stuff like that. So I feel like the blueprint was kind of there throughout, but then you saw the Howie blueprint with all the defensive linemen and all the just the scattered brain picks that we had. Not knocking the picks, but you could tell that there was a little bit of Howie Roseman in the draft for sure. But in general, though, I'm just really interested to see how they use these guys. But 100% agree with Shane with the Kenny Gainwell pick. He's like the Nyheim Hines on like steroids pick for me. I'm really excited to see how they use him.
What about you? What about you, Dylan?
I honestly have no damn idea what it tells you about these two coordinators and this head coach, because I really don't know if we know who the defensive coordinator and this head coach and play caller is going to be. I think they both said it best. I think Gainwell is kind of the overall like depiction. Like you can point your finger to that player and say, okay, Sirianni, get the ball into a back's hands, a pass catcher out of the backfield, can chip block, like speed. Like I got all that. But outside of that, like the McPherson pick, I get if that is how Gannon's style, if you wanted a ball hawk. But when you guys start talking earlier about, how he's more of an inside corner and not outside corner. Well, isn't that the same thing we've learned about Avonte Maddox over the last couple of years, right? So, like, then who is cornerback two? Like, the McPherson pick, like, I think it just more so told you about Howie Roseman and whoever said it a couple minutes ago about his, like, he had no direction. Like, he just kind of goes all over. He has no plan for these drafts. I don't think we're going to know until we actually see it, but I guess Gainwell is the one pick that I can point my finger to that screams that system.
Rob.
All right, ready, guys? I'm going to keep it very simple for you. You want to know what it tells us about Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon? Not a goddamn thing. This draft was Howie. This draft was Jeffrey. Even Gainwell, let me put it to you this way. Gainwell said the guy he modeled his game after, he loved to watch play, was Darren Sproles, right? Remember a few years ago in the world-class running back draft, all kinds of running backs.
Donnell Pumphrey.
How he goes for the small back that can catch the ball a little bit, Donnell Pumphrey. All I know is this. I watched 4 defensive linemen when you didn't need defensive linemen. I watched high upside, smartest man in the room, analytical type picks. I watched a corner who doesn't fit the outside position that you need necessarily, more of an inside guy. These are Howie-esque picks. All right, Devonta Smith was one of those situations where I feel like they said, shit, like we traded back to 12 and we're about to lose out on all the guys. We have to make a move. I'm telling you right now, I know nothing more now about Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni than I did. I was told Gannon liked, as Chris was saying, he likes those long, rangy corners. They didn't draft one of them. You know what I mean? I'm out there pounding the table for Melifonwu and Paulson Adebo and all these other guys. No. They draft a guy who everyone that you read says is probably better suited in the slot. This was a Howie draft. Now, maybe it pans out, but it doesn't tell me anything about the coaching staff yet. what I'm going to have to see now is how do they develop the guys that Howie has picked.
Trevon Moehrig, man. When's the last time the Eagles have drafted a safety in the top rounds? That would have been just a signal, to me at least, that there's a change in guard. There's a change in voice with this process. So
the last time they did it was Nate Allen, who I thought was going to be a stud.
Nate freaking Allen, man. Or no, Jaquan Jarrett. I think it was Jaquan Jarrett.
Jaquan Jarrett, too. Yeah, I thought Nate Allen. I bought a Nate Allen jersey like within a week. I thought he was going to be a stud.
Man, I just if you would have got more, I got 37. Anyway,
my smartwatch just told me I hit my exercise goal. I think my heart rate might have got up during this podcast.
The greatest podcast ever because Shane showed anger. I like it.
I love it. All right, last question, guys. With the draft over, it's kind of bittersweet, man. Thousands and thousands of hours, and here we are putting a bow on it. Let's finish this show. How many wins do you expect from the Eagles in 2021? And what to you constitutes a successful season? Rob, you're up.
Wins? I don't know. 6, maybe. I mean, their division, I think, has still got a lot of holes, so that plays into it. What constitutes a successful season is very simple. That Jalen Hurts can be your starting quarterback. Because if Jalen Hurts can be your starting quarterback, then those first-round picks can go to positions to help bolster and make this. And it makes the rebuild 2 or 3 years quicker than if you got to go and take another quarterback next year. To me, this season is all about – I don't care about the wins and losses. I need to see can Jalen Hurts be the franchise quarterback going forward for the Eagles.
Did you see what Terry Bradshaw said today about Jalen Hurts?
I listened to it.
Oh, did you hear what he said about Carson? You can't be out there saying scripture on the field. I was like, Jesus. Why is this going after everybody?
My goodness. Okay, that's a take. Dylan, you're up, man.
Oh, man. Wins, I agree with Rob. I'm at 5. I think the schedule is not that difficult. I think they probably 5 or 6, but I'll lean 6. Cap is 7 for me, to be honest, with the extended season, with the extra game. And then successful season. Man, I'd love to say can Howie Roseman after it, but I agree with Rob. It is all about one thing. It's all about one guy, and that is Jalen Hurts. And I'll take it a step further. Obviously, if you find out Jalen Hurts is your guy, that's the biggest success story of this season. But I'll even just to say to find out if he's the guy or not even to have him be the guy, just have that answer solved by the end of next year with those 3 first-round draft picks you have in 2022, because this year should be about nothing else. If you're still walking out of the season with question marks, he could be, he could not be. You haven't made any production. You haven't gotten any further in this process. If you don't find it out, what did you do all this for last year? What was the quarterback controversy for? What was drafting Jalen Hurts to be the guy for? So yeah, 5, 6, 7 wins, and that 5 to 7 wins, and is Jalen Hurts a franchise quarterback or not?
Chris.
So as soon as we got rid of Doug and hired Sirianni, I'm like, I can't worry about wins and losses as much as it's going to drive me crazy as an Eagles fan, because it like going Sunday to Sunday, like it is miserable when you're just losing like that, especially when the division got a little bit better this year for once. And it's one of those things where, like, if I can see that Sirianni is improving the development of the players, if I can see Gannon is improving at the development of these players, if I can see that we are finally getting some blue chip young guys and that there's a culture, no Sunday morning leaks anymore. I'm so sick of that. Every Sunday morning this season, there's another stupid story, and everyone's like, oh, like Carson Wentz, like it's all his fault. Like, let's see what's going on. I don't know. But, like, the leaks didn't even stop during the draft. I mean, the day of the draft, you're hearing, like, all the Quiddy Pay stuff. But overall, though, the schedule, I think that the opponents I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult than it appears. So I'm expecting, especially in a 17-game season, I would say 6 wins, 7 wins max. And it's not always – and that's impressive. It's not easy to win, especially when you have a rookie coach and, like, after the draft, we're still like, we don't have a cornerback too. And look at the opponents that we're going against. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill, DJ Moore. Like, it goes on and on. Like, we're going against – and in our division, the wide receiver groups are crazy. And it's going to be a tough schedule, in my opinion, because the division, they're just going to beat the hell out of each other. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I'm more worried about, can Jalen Hurts with Devonta Smith, the best wide receiver on paper that we've probably ever drafted for a quarterback one, can he use what we're giving him? If Landon Dickerson stays healthy, we'll have a little bit extra push behind him, in front of him, actually. But, like, can he be the guy? Because we need him to be the guy. It's the best case scenario, even if you don't believe in him, because those 2, possibly 3 first-round picks can be used for the Derek Stingleys, the Kyle Hamiltons, the Josh Jobs. Like, we need those picks to go towards positional players. That's how you go from being a 4-win team to getting back to the Lombardi, if we hit on those picks and if we don't have to waste our time finding a franchise quarterback again.
Shane.
Yeah, I expect the Eagles to be in like that 6 to 7, maybe an 8-win range. I don't expect this to be like just an absolutely miserable year, but you got a first-time head coach who's never called plays. You've got a first-time defensive coordinator who's never called plays. So, I mean, there's going to be growing pains there. To me, it's a successful season if a few things happen. One, it's successful if Jalen Hurts is the guy. And you might say, well, if Jalen Hurts is the guy, he should win more than 6 or 7 games. But who do we have in the back 7 of our defense? We don't have anybody. So even if he's the guy, I don't expect us to be great. But if he's the guy, and listen, I have questions about that. And to all the people yelling at me on Twitter and in my YouTube film breakdowns about, oh, you just want Jalen Hurts to fail, I want to show you something. Like, okay, I'm wearing. I've got the Jalen Hurts shirt. Okay, I'm pulling for the guy. I love the guy. I got questions. I want him to answer those. I want him to be the guy. If Gannon and Sirianni can get more out of their respective units than Peterson and Schwartz did, I'm going to consider it a successful season. I need to see growth from Jalen Reagor. I need to see why we took him in the first round. I need to see that on the field. And I need Devonta Smith to be a hit. And if that happens, think about our offense for a minute. You have Jalen Hurts at quarterback. He's 22 years old. You have Devonta Smith, 22 years old. Jalen Reagor, 22 years old. Travis Fulgham, 25. Quez Watkins, 22. At running back, we've got Sanders, who is 24, and Gainwell, who's 22. You've got Dallas Goedert, who's 26 at tight end. Like, if that core develops into something good, you have a very young and a very exciting future. Oh, and by the way, you've got 3 first-round picks next year. But it all hinges on Hurts. And if the Eagles are in the quarterback hunt next year because Hurts is not the guy, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow, having to package those picks to move up in an arms race for QB1 when Justin Fields was sitting there for you at 10. Like, think about that, okay? I understand that we were not going to trade up. We traded down. We were interested in quarterbacks. We traded down because we didn't think one was going to be there. If you could have traded down and got an extra first-round pick and still picked up who I considered QB2 in this draft, like, you pull the trigger on that if you're not positive that Jalen Hurts is your guy. And so maybe Hurts works out, but if it doesn't, man, that's going to be a hard pill to swallow next year when we see 2 of those 3 first-round picks and maybe a future first go into getting a new quarterback. And the other thing, I just thought of this when Rob was talking about having the picks, but say Jalen Hurts works out, he's the guy. We know it beyond the shadow of a doubt. We got 3 first-round picks next year. I'd assume we're going to take a corner with one of those. Let's think through other positions, though. We're not taking a wide receiver. We wouldn't take a quarterback. We wouldn't take a running back. We wouldn't take a linebacker. So next year, if Jalen Hurts works out, we're walking out of the first round with a corner, an offensive lineman, and a defensive lineman, which once again is why we had horrible spending on day 2 and 3 with so much investment in the trenches.
Well said. Well said. You guys absolutely nailed it. I'm just going to boil it down to, I want to see fight. Like, I want to see – you see the Eagles in transition mode. I want to see a spirit and a level of fight from the Philadelphia Eagles that we just did not see at all last year. This was a team that just completely laid down offense, defense. It was all over the place like we've seen in the last couple of years. I want to see some fight. You look at Devonta Smith. You look at Landon Dickerson. You look at Jacoby Stevens. These are guys that, have toughness, that are going to come to NovaCare for the Philadelphia Eagles and battle. That's what I want to see from Nick Sirianni this year. The meat and potatoes is I don't want to be embarrassed as an Eagles fan like I was week in, week out. That last year was absolutely brutal. I'm excited to see Nick Sirianni kind of rally the troops a little bit. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm very excited to see if these guys can play for a coach because we haven't seen it in some time. So, guys, let's wrap it up here. Let's do final plugs and final thoughts and plugs. Lead us off, Shane.
I want to shout out this comment from Rufus real quick. Said specifically thanks to Dibe, Shane, and the Tough Cover Pod. I've been regretting never following my dreams, and you guys have inspired me to order the stuff for a podcast.
Yeah,
that's awesome, Rufus. Congratulations. Shoot me a DM on Twitter. Let me know when you get up and running. I'd love to help you out any way I can. But for me, you can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. Stay tuned to the Painted Lines. I kicked off a Football 101 series, just kind of breaking down the basics of the game. We kicked it off on Draft Week talking about prospect evaluation. And so if you want to check that one out, it's up. But we're going to break down everything. Coverage shells, specific coverages, route combination, all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned. That's going to carry me all the way through into the preseason. So I'm really excited about that.
Chris, I know you got your mock draft ready to go for 2022, right?
Honestly, yeah. People are asking about all the players, and I love the 2022 class so much for like our needs. But let's see what happens. But plug right here, right there, Mally _Chris _24. Overall, though, I'm excited to see this class. It's just the reason why we love the draft so much. It's a chance. It's hope. It's something that just gives you something to watch. Like you're just like, all right, like there's the guy, there's our first round pick, there's our second round pick. Let's see what happens. And this team, a 4-win team, desperately needed that. I did a breakdown with one of my other boys, Gail, on Devonta Smith. If you want to check that out, we showed just how smart he was, savvy route runner, all of that. But in general, though, I saw people. It was so weird seeing how people were just like hating on all the draft junkies. They're like, oh, like who cares if like the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th round picks are bust. I saw someone say that. They said, as long as Devonta Smith's good, I don't care about any of our other picks. Like, what are you talking about? In 2020, 66% of the active players were 4th round picks or later or undrafted free agents. There's more undrafted free agents that are in the Hall of Fame than 1st round picks. So don't tell me that all those other picks don't matter. They do matter. I mean, look at the Eagles Super Bowl team, Corey Clement, like Trey Burton. Like, look at the Philly special alone that play. It's just so frustrating that people knock the draft just because they're not into it. Like, that's how you get these teams. That's how you get cost-effective, efficient teams, and that's what it's all about. And I love talking to you guys about the draft, and it's going to be exciting to see how these guys battle it out at camp and going into the season.
Does anyone have like a DeLorean and a flux capacitor I could just borrow so we could like fast forward, 9 months from now? That would be absolutely terrific. You are up, Dylan. Plugs and final thought.
Oh, man. Well, final thought. One more success came into my head, and the great Rob Motti said it last time I had him on one of my shows. One success would be have someone make a Pro Bowl of this rookie class. like he said, it's not that hard to make a Pro Bowl, guys. It's really not. And outside Devonta Smith, I don't see that happening. So it all really comes down to that. And I'm not saying that means anything, but in the future, have one of these guys be a Pro Bowl player. Other than that, as far as plugs, busy week. Tomorrow night, the Daily Dose is pushed back to 7:30, I believe. We're having the great Tyrone Johnson back on for some Sixers playoffs and Eagles draft talk. Wednesday on the Daily Dose, Vince Quinn from WIP and CBS Sports Radio will be on the show. And then Sunday, Turf Talk just kicked off tonight with my man Scotty, so go check that episode out on the Painted Lines YouTube. But Rob Motti will be joining us on Sunday for the second episode of Turf Talk.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, you're up, Rob Langy. Go ahead, man.
All right, man. You guys can follow me, Philly _Madness. My last thought is, we do have to wait and see. I mean, it's going to be such a weird football season. It's been a really long time, I think, since as Eagles fans we've gone into a season with such low expectations. It has been a while, and it's going to be a tough one. But as Dibe said, if they're showing fight, if Jalen Hurts is showing some things, there could be some positives that come out of it. As far as plugs, you can catch me hopping in on here over at Party on Broad. I am going to be making a phone call to the soon only a couple months from now, Jessica Town will be married. But I'm gonna be putting a phone call into her about maybe doing a little Madness reunion show to talk about this past weekend's events. See if I could get her on. So stay tuned for that. But outside of that, just follow my negative ass tweets. That would be really important.
All right, guys. Make sure you make sure you subscribe here. Final thoughts. Yeah, you nailed it, Rob. Like the grading of the 2021 season is going to be definitely on a different curve. It's going to be really fascinating when we're doing our watch parties as well. I think that's going to change completely and how we kind of watch the game. A lot more individualized, I think, moving forward. But I did a mock draft, or not a mock draft. I did my draft recap video here. It's doing pretty well. I did all my grades. There's highlights, all that kind of stuff. Broke it down. Make sure you go check that out. Thank you, everyone here, for watching, man. It's kind of sad that it's over. But you know what time it is? It's time for the NBA draft. So me, Tiago, and I think Mark, I know we're all going to be jumping right into the NBA draft, and that's going to be a ton of fun. I think we got like 2 months remaining or something like that. For Dylan, for Shane, for Rob, for Chris, for myself, thanks for watching, guys. Stay awesome.
Sixers win it! Wow! Oh, man, Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook. You